Good morning, folks. It's Frank, the Service Geek. Welcome to the Service Geek Podcast. Hope you're doing well. Let me double check my audio here, make sure that everything is working. You should be hearing me. Let me do, everything should be working. Where's my mixer? All right. Input device. Yes. All right. So since I'm not doing any lives, nobody's coming on board. I'm trying to simplify this process. Actually, I needed to give me 1 second. I needed my phone to go live. All right. We're going to go live on everywhere you want us to be. We're like Visa. Let's go here to, let's see here. Let's go to TikTok.
Yeah, I don't really chase these guys.
Let's see here. And live. All right. And we are live on TikTok now. I just have to do it through my phone, but I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying the conversations I'm having afterwards. I'm enjoying the messages. A lot of people are not going to ask a lot of questions that they feel that they're threatened by the backlash or the stupid comments that other people are going to make, because that's just a reality of being on social media. And so I do get a ton afterwards of questions of people that, hey, what did you mean by this? Can you elaborate on that? Let's see here. So I'm going to start out with last week's question, because I made a comment that we don't owe employees a living wage. And what did I mean by that? By the way, you're able to, on all the platforms, you should be able to, let me see here. I'm trying to get this out of my way here in the chat room. Make sure that I have, hey, good morning. What's up, Ace, Aaron, Veal, ACE, the man in Tennessee. I'm loving your stuff, bro, that you're putting out on, I'm following your YouTube channel, and the stuff you're putting out. It's pretty cool. I was going to do a little analysis of it on the SEO part for you, and then I'll drop you some feedback on that, on what you can do that's better. But let me see here. Was it this guy? Was it Kevin? I think it was Kevin. No, it wasn't Kevin. But anyway, he asked me, look, can you elaborate on that? Of why don't we owe employees a living wage? I says that is impossible for you to qualify or quantify. And I'm going to show you through this presentation of what I've looked at in the industry, at least in the pest control industry. Then you can take that information and you can use the systems to be able to analyze your market. Because one of the things that I find in the marketplace is that you go, and I'll prove a point to you. I think I got it here, where I asked a question, how much are you guys charging in apartment buildings to do general pest control in apartment buildings, every door, every single time when you go, and does that include German roaches? And I got prices from $1 a door to $12 a door, and then anywhere from $99 to $400 on the German roach part. You cannot go online in a group and ask, what are you guys offering on pricing? You need to keep pricing and employee wages and all that off the table on social media, because one person living in Washington, D.C., doing business in that market is going to have a totally different cost of operation than somebody in neighboring Virginia. And some compare that to somebody where Aaron is down in Tennessee. You're never going to be able to compare. You get a comparison. You got to compare what's in your market. And the problem is that most guys don't know how to do competitive analysis, research analysis, to understand that you got to understand your market. One of the biggest things I hear from solo operators that just tells me he's never going to grow is, I don't care what my competition is doing. I do me. In other words, I don't care what the competition is charging. And what I usually find in the consultations is that you're undercharging. So when you don't know what your competition is doing, you don't know what the competition is like in the market. You don't know what a comparable, how do you compare what you're going to pay? Because the easy out of everybody is just to say, well, I'm just going to pay a flat percentage fee. I'm going to pay production. Then when you do an analysis on your costs, you realize that if you pay the average market percentage, which is about 18 to 20% for startup techs, even less, because it depends if you're a growing company or not. And I have a little spreadsheet I'm working on to show you this. And I got to finalize it. But you realize that if you're a startup company and you're a growing company, that your cost really needs to be down somewhere in the 12 to 14%. And people say, well, they gasp at that. It says, I would never work for that. I says, the biggest problem is you're not going to hire you. The only road to growth, the only road to 10x is simplification. The simpler you make it, the more duplicatable it is. Then what you need to do is you need to really hire the lowest skilled person for the lowest skilled job. You cannot hire really sometimes for everything you want to do. In other words, if you're a cleaning company and you're only cleaning houses, you're looking for a very specific skill set. If you're doing pool service, it's a very simplified service. You take a rat trap. For those guys in the road and the pest control industry, a rat trap has irreducible complexity. In other words, you cannot make it any simpler. You can change the style, you can change the look, you can change the materials, you can change whatever you do. But at the end of the day, you have a base, you have a paddle for releasing, you have a lock for the hammer, and you have a hammer, and then you have a spring. You can't reduce it anymore. If you take one of those components out, you will no longer have a rat trap. That is about as simple as you can make a rat trap. The simpler your business model is, if you're hiring for only spraying chemical applicators, then that's a real simple model. That's about as simple as you can make it. We spray inside and outside, and that's all we do. That's the simplest model. You start going to more an IPM practice, you find out you carry a lot more product. You throw in lawn and ornamental, now you have more complexity. You throw in termite, now you have more complexity. Now you start adding wildlife. And if you want a tech that, because in other words, for you to survive this market, you had to do so many different things. You had to do lawn, and you had to do termite, and you had to do wildlife, and you had to do repairs, and you had to take people's trash out for them, because you were a one-man show, and you didn't have enough business because you didn't have a business model, and you didn't have a marketing plan, and you don't know how to do sales. And now you had to take on whatever work came from wherever it came. You're all over the place. You're working, driving 40, you're working 10-hour days to service 8 customers. When you should be servicing, on an 8-hour day, 14, 15 customers. Where you're producing $800 a day when you need to be producing $1,500 a day. And you can't hire until you get to a certain number, but the problem is you don't know where those numbers need to be. And what I hear across the board, for those of you that are out there, is, the whole issue with the living wage, and the whole issue with artificially wages were increased, and the government did this, and the sitting president did that. I said, here's the reality, folks. There ain't a darn thing you can do about that. You can't change that. You're not going to change that when we go to the voting booth and hit the lever like a slot machine, and all of a sudden you're going to get what you want out of that. and all of a sudden things are going to correct themselves, because the mess that we're in financially right now, that's going to take, a decade if we're lucky. Chances are wages are never going to go down. Chances are properties are never going to go down. Costs are never going to go down. And as a business owner, you can't depend and put blame. Having that conversation is fruitless. The conversation we need to be having is, what do we do now to deal with the problem that we're in? And how do we manage and navigate that? And when somebody tells me, I don't care what my competition is doing, it's usually the same person that tells me they haven't raised their prices in 5 years, and they don't have enough money now as a solo operator to even operate themselves, because when the cost of fuel goes from $3 a gallon to $5 a gallon, and you're traveling all over God's creation, you're SOL. So what are we looking at? That everybody's in the same boat. I'm going to give you something that came out that I talked about last week. And that is that what we're seeing is now that in this market, and this is, I'm going to show you this, and then I'm going to show you, actually, I need to go over here and I need to share my screen. All right. And right here. All right. So I'm going to share this. And basically, a study shows that about 40% of employers are avoiding hiring Gen Zers. Okay. The problem that we have with all of these studies in the service business and in our situation, if you go and look for data for self-employed people hiring their first technician, there's no data. There's no course. There is nothing available online. You'll do a search. You'll get 3 million things that tell you the same thing over and over, that you need to pay a competitive wage, that you need to build a culture, that you need to do this, things that you have no idea what the heck, and how do you even apply culture and create a culture for two people? The culture is you. So a lot of what's out there is nonsense to you that it doesn't apply. So when we're looking at avoiding hiring Gen Zers, it's because these are in the professional environments hiring college kids who come out of college with no work experience. They have an education and they have an unrealistic expectation of what they're going to get paid. Also, what we look at is down here there's actually another one that's actually pretty good. Is they struggle with eye contact. Here's where the rubber meets the road. You have a budget for a unskilled helper, and what you're wanting is a skilled technician. And you're never going to get the skilled technician because you actually don't need it. I get it. In certain parts, like we're in Tennessee where Aaron is, the person needs to has a special license. They need to be able to take a test and pass it in order to work for you. Well, it's the same in HVAC. It's the same in plumbing. It's the same in pool service. They have to take an exam, pass a test, take some type of course, become certified. But what we're going to find out is the demographics are the same, and usually the wages are about the same. Because when you're starting out in HVAC, you're not starting out repairing systems. Chances are you're going to be installing conduit. You're going to be installing, crawling into crawl spaces and running material across to have the air go flowing. When you start out as a plumber and an apprentice in plumbing, you're going to start as a helper digging holes. When you start out in pest control, chances are you're going to start out doing maintenance service only. That's what you should be focused on, is what is the simplest task that I need to hire for, because I'm never going to be able to hire a full-blown technician, and I'm going to show you why it never works. And it's an illusion, but it doesn't happen. They ask unreasonable compensation, dressed inappropriate, use inappropriate language, refuse to turn camera on, doing virtual interview, and brought parents to the interview. 20%. Their parents are bringing them to an interview. I mean, this is where we're at, folks. And for all these jobs, in order for you to have a full-blown tech, you need people that can work independently, unsupervised, And this is why now, if you have a service vehicle, you need to install service cameras, two-face cameras, because you need to know what's happening out in the field, and you need to know what the heck the tech is doing behind the wheel. You can't have somebody that's addicted to Facebook being on Facebook while they're driving a commercial vehicle swerving all over the road. So you're getting calls and going, why is your tech swerving all over the road? You see, what we have is something that is not really reachable. So we need to simplify it. And we need to have, when you hire your first person, you need to have a plan, a very simple task. Chances are you're going to have to hire a helper that helps you sweep the weeds, the eaves, does the perimeter control while you go inside and tackle the difficult problems. While you're doing an initial service and you're doing a roach clean or whatever, he's doing something else. You're going to have to hire a helper at first because you cannot afford a full-blown tech. When we look at companies that are having to look at this, 45% of companies are going to offer etiquette classes. You literally have to teach kids how to look somebody in the eye, how to say hello, how to tell them that they're going to, what service they're going to perform, explain the scope of the service to the client, and communicate verbally. Where everything is done over text, and if I don't like the answer you gave me, basically I ghost you and I don't talk to you anymore. That's the mentality. So we're in a situation, I'm going to tell you why this is important, that you do need to look at Gen Zers, because now they're entering that workplace. They're between that 20 to 24, 25, and you have millennials now in the 30-something, entering almost the 40-something age, and they got golden handcuffs now because now they're buying houses. Now they're having kids. When you have somebody with a mortgage that they just bought for $500,000, you're not going to be able to afford that person with $36,000 payroll. And you can't even afford sometimes a $36,000 a year payroll. So you have all this stuff that you need to do, this training with these people, but you need them. Here's where it is. 60% of millennials are between 40 and 42, and they own a home. Your clients are mostly right now Gen Xers and Boomers, which have this. And this will, this is going to go down as obviously they start dying. They're getting into their, the Boomers are in their late 70s, 80s. They're gone from the workplace. So you don't have, you're not going to have that workforce. They're going to be working at Walmart, greeting people at the door. They're going to be at Publix, filling bags because they need extra income, but they're not going to be able to go into a crawl space. They can't go into an attic. They're not going to be able to walk outside, around properties in the sun for 8 hours a day. This is the reality of most service business. It requires you to work outside. It requires you to work in all kinds of weather. It requires you to have interpersonal skills. These are the soft skills that you need to be hiring for. And the problem is, if you don't get those soft skills, honestly, you need to pass. And it's becoming harder because I just hired and fired in the last 3 months 2 people. And I'm looking, and now I'm thinking, do I really want to hire? Can I revamp my organization a little bit more, get a little bit more out of it, and hold that off so I don't have to hire another one, at least for another couple months? It gives us breathing room. You need breathing room to be able to do a lot of things. Sometimes this process is going to take about 6 months. And what you're thinking is you're going to go out and hire somebody when the process is really going to take about 6 months, which is going to cost you about $4,000 when you're done hiring that person. It's going to cost you about $4,000 in the time that you have to spend investing in it. And if you're the average technician in the industry making $150 an hour that you have to charge, you have to give that up at some place, or something has to give for a while so that you can do what it is that you have to do. So when we look at pest control technicians, and I hope you guys are all seeing, sorry guys on TikTok that you're not seeing this screen share that I'm doing, but in the recorded video that we're going to be putting out later, and all this will be there. So just so you know, at least you're getting the information. Let me see if I got any, and then I'll answer some questions at the end, because I really need to get through a lot of this material in the next 40 minutes. What we're looking at, pest control technician demographics and statistics in the US. Now, these companies have a lot of data now, because a lot of it is real data from places like Indeed, from places like Glassdoor, where they're collecting all the data from all the applicants and all the people that are posting jobs, and they have really solid data. And you can drill down to your market, your city, your county to get the data. But we're looking at a nationwide view right now. There's about 71,000 pest control technicians. Okay. That's probably not including owners and individuals who are not, because the reason they get this data from is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, where you have to, pay people on a payroll. And then when you're paying people on a payroll, that's how it gets recorded. So that's how we get the numbers. When we're looking at operators, we'll see a drastically different picture when we look at self-employed solo operators, which are about 70% of the market. Any market you're in, it's about 70% are solo operators with no employees. The companies that do have, that get to 1 million, it's between 6 and 11%. All right. 6% are women, 93% are men. I know that some people are always making issue out of these numbers where, it's a male-dominated business. I don't think it is. I think that most women just don't want to be out in the heat, be out dealing with chemicals, and they don't want bugs. I mean, I never walked into a house with a woman that ever hired me that wanted me to show them the bug that I caught. I think that's a reality. When we look at the cleaning business, it's a female-dominated business. And I think that that's a conversation, that I wish there were more women in pest control, because I think they make really good salespeople and they communicate really well. But it's not the reality. So when I post a job on Indeed, I might get the numbers reflect that, where it's out of 100, maybe 7 women will apply. They're not applying. So it isn't like I don't want to hire them. Is that one of the first people that when I wanted to hire was actually a woman but she was making so much money. She was making like $80-something thousand a year in pest control, because she did mega accounts for a really brand that was very specific. Couldn't afford her. So what we're looking at is the average age of a pest control technician across the country, okay, is 39. Okay. The wages, Seattle pays an annual average, and they average it out on the market, $44,000 a year on average. Now, these are averages. I'm going to show you the difference, because when you get down to when you drill down into the stats, which are important here, they compare it to other industries. Ignore my cats who are deciding to have zoomies and are all over the place running around. And this is great stuff that you need to look at these companies that are providing this, because look at the disparity in the wage gap, of who's making the money. Okay. So this is really interesting data that opens your eyes to the reality. All right. And the age. And then when we get to here, breakdown by age, 20%. Look at the 80-20 rule. 20% are between the ages of 20 and 30. These are going to be your startup techs, that age group, because they're looking to make more money. They worked fast food, chances are they worked at minimum wage jobs that doesn't even provide a living wage, because they can't afford to leave home with the money they're making. So they need to make more money so they can afford to be more independent. That's what they're looking at right now on average. That 20% is going to be your first technician. Chances are in that age group. The second group is that 30 to 40. The 40 plus is a problem because these are usually the average age of your experienced techs. When we look at pest control operators, by the way, you can use Zippa for a pest control operator and also for a pest control technician. They actually have really good data on this. And what you're seeing is that these 40-year-olds are going to demand the highest wages because these guys are the ones that have the mortgages, that have the 2 kids, that drive, they have 2 cars, chances are, that are, leased or bought, and they probably got $15,000, $20,000 worth of credit cards because they bought a house and they still haven't paid off the furniture. They have golden handcuffs. They can't work for you. So you were wanting this, but in reality, this is what you can afford. So you have to revamp your business model now to allow for you to hire those people with the low skills. Low skilled labor is what you're going to have. Why? Because the majority of people's education in this business is 45% have a high school diploma. 50% of the people you're going to hire have no college degree. 20%, 8% have a diploma of some type, and 7% have other. Right? So you can't say, I want really brilliant people that can really think. And this is why hiring is so difficult, because you have to sift through all of the people who think that they deserve that salary. When you post a salary making $18 to $20 an hour, you're going to get everybody making 12 thinking they deserve 18. They're going to apply. Your job as an owner is to weed through all of that and find the best candidate. And when you hire the best candidate, it's still a 50-50 crapshoot because you have no experience in hiring. And I'm going to get into that the next, class. I think we're going through this systematically, but now we get into plumbing. 19,000 plumbers. The average age, 41. It's even less females for plumbers, right? There's a wage gap, but the 7% of those women doing that work can keep up, and so it's not that much of a wage disparity with a lot of other industries. And see, they compare this, to other jobs, still about the same. And when you get down here, you see the same thing. 20 to 30-year-olds, 18%. The numbers are almost fixed, folks. It feels like there's collusion somehow to keep these numbers the way, but it's just a reality. And what we have to do is learn the reality. 40-year-olds, it's the same percentage, almost. When you go to field service techs, for all field service techs combined, 43. There's 21,000 field service techs, different. These are more highly technical, probably, but you look at the same numbers. The wages are about the same. Okay? And you go down here, and, it's higher here because a lot of field service techs, where we're talking about high tech, you can work longer when you're high tech. You can be of a higher age. Chances are, but look at the wages for on average, it goes up, but it isn't like 100,000 a year. Okay, so when you go to pest control technicians across the country, 38,000. Look at the wages for them. It goes down, all right? For plumbers across the country, 59. Service techs, 54. Let's see here. I have HVAC. 40 years old. HVAC. There's a lot of HVAC techs. More competition than in pest control. I mean, you can take a 6-month, 9-month course and become a certified technician. You don't have to go to college for it. You're going to make $52,000 a year. But look at what I'm saying is, look at this. The 20 to 30-year-olds is about that 18 to 24% of the market, no matter where you go. These are going to be your first hires, because if you read these articles, on all of this stuff that goes on in the industry, based on hiring, you can't find a single study. You can't find a single article. You can't find anything on micro businesses. And this is why you guys have such a hard time. Let me get out of here and exit out of this. This is why the solo market, okay, the solo market and the people who are micro businesses, that means you have 1 to 4 employees, it's less than 5, and usually less than $1 million a year. You cannot find any data on this particular. Why? Because the problem is that there isn't enough money. There isn't enough things to services that people can sell you that you can buy. This is why you get duped in a lot of SEO, because they'll put a price of $299, which is what they know you can afford. And this is why you get 15 calls a day from telemarketers targeting you. The moment they get a automated phone system, they hang up because they realize you're a bigger company. When you answer your phone and you're Joe's of Joe's Plumbing, that's who they're targeting. So they got little products that they can sell you that never really are going to give you. So where do you go to get the training for real hiring unless you can pay a real course for $4,000 and get the real knowledge? It isn't available because you can't. What they say is like, look, it's $4,000 for this course for you to really know what you need to do. But you say, I can't afford that. I'm never going to pay that. That's stupid. Why should I have to? If I just put out an ad on Indeed, I will get 100 applicants. Good luck. Right? Because if you go to the recruiter sites, go join the Facebook recruiter sites, they're throwing in the towel. Most of recruiters that are in the business are now switching over to compliance because compliance is a whole lot easier in HR than HR recruiting. You see? So when you look at what's happening, if you're going to hire a recruiter, it's about $4,000 or first year's 10% of first year salary. But that's if you're in the higher bracket. If you're hiring, people in $100,000 a year jobs, they're going to take 10%, $10,000 to find you qualified candidates. When you're talking about low skilled labor, where they're going to be making 18, 19 an hour, they're going to want 20% or more because it isn't worth their time to go find anybody for you with the amount of work that it takes, because you will find out the amount of work that it takes. If you're lucky to find a private recruiter that really is focused on that industry, it's like finding a needle in the haystack and then deciding you're going to take the haystack apart hay by hay in order to find it. That's the reality. So this is why only 6 to 11% of businesses ever grow past the owner to $1 million, because by the time you get through this process, it's darn hard. And then how do you learn to hire? Because you can take a course. You can go and take a night course. You can take an online course. And let's say it takes you 6 months to get through that course. You say, I don't have 6 months. Well, you can't have it both ways. You have to know the reality that you have to study, and you're going to have to get an education. You're not going to get training. You're going to get an education. Okay? And then you still have to go and implement that. The problem with the good thing about the education, and at least you're going to know where all the pitfalls are, which accelerates the process for you, right? Now your process is accelerated to where you remove a lot of the guesswork and the trial and error work. Remove a lot of it. You don't remove it all. You still have to go through the process of learning. Of how do you learn to do anything? It's only by repetition. So in order for you to learn how to interview, you're going to have to interview a couple hundred people, make a decision, then evaluate their work, and figure out very quickly if this is somebody you want to keep, or do you have to start this process all over again? And where people give up is this: I don't want to start this process all over again. I want somebody to hire that's going to stay with me. And I realize that if you hire Generation Z people, that if you look at their resumes, they're only going to be with you for 6 months, right? If you accept that as a reality, then you hire a helper for 6 months. You train on the minimal. If the people that you decide you're going to keep, you have to keep training. You have to keep moving them up. But you don't have training protocols. You don't have onboarding protocols. So how do you retain them? Then how do you increase your wages? And now you have to invest in more marketing, and you have to invest. You see the problem why most people say it's just much easier to stay solo. But if you're young and you're 30 something right now and you're looking to jump ship, understand this is what awaits you. And understand that if you're being transparent with your people, and next week I'm making a note here. Let me make a note because I've been working on this calculator for this process. Let me have the calculator finished. Okay. If you're going to hire, understand that you're going to have very simple tasks that they do. In other words, you can really only afford a worker at the beginning because you're saying, how do I hire a full-time person? Maybe you hire a part-time college kid in that 20-year-old range, which I have many times. That seems to be the best way to start for me, is hire people. Or you hire somebody, like right now I'm looking at, and I'm in Miami and I'm in Homestead, what I can pay in Homestead, which is still the Miami area, Miami-Dade County, is way different than what I would have to pay somebody who lives near downtown. Because the cost of living down here is easier. Plus, you're hiring people between the ages of 20 and 30. Chances are they're still living at home. So a living wage for them is not the same as a living wage. This is why you cannot pay a living wage. Because a living wage for a college student is way different than a living wage for a person who has a house, 2 kids, a mortgage, 2 cars, and credit cards. It's not realistic. So college students are your best bet. This is how a lot of these franchises and painting companies, where they get their employees. Because if you sell a house to paint and you need to paint it in a day, you can hire 5 college students to help paint and have 1 supervisor and teach them how to paint it. You can get a house painted. It might not be the best perfectly painted house, but they guaranteed painting in a day, and it got painted. So you look at these models, these franchise models, and it's really about reducing things to the ridiculous. Can I just hire somebody to sweep eaves? Okay. Treat perimeters. And if the customer complains about ants on the counter, put a little station there, create a station, bait the trail, and they're done. They're not doing roach cleanouts. They're not doing bed bugs. They're not doing termites. They're not doing wildlife. They're not doing things that require so much training. Then you just hire them for that. You say, but I only have so much work. Hire a kid that's going to college for 2 days a week to take on that and change your route and modify your routes to where you're only servicing those areas on the things you're giving them to do on the days that they're working for you. But that's a lot of management. I get it. That's management. This is what I had to go through at 19 when I was managing the store, and I had 40 something, and I had 16-year-olds after school working for me. When I had kids in the summer working for me. You have to become now a manager. You can't, everybody wants to abdicate. This is kind of what I keep finding. You just want to hire somebody that you can dump on a truck, a live body. Does that person know how to drive? What's their experience driving a truck? What's their driving habits? And what you find out is once you put them in a truck by themselves, this is why I love complete immersion, is I don't go in that truck with that person. They will, as they're driving, their habits will kick in. And if you're driving behind them, you will see everything. If you got a camera in that vehicle, you see everything. You need to have cameras in all your vehicles. You need to have GPS tracking. Because you need to supervise people that don't know. The majority of people you're going to hire have never worked unsupervised. And now all of a sudden they have all this freedom. And what do they do with it? At first, you don't know how they're going to behave because they don't know how to work. They only know how to work in a place where the boss is right there saying, hey, you need to fix this. You need to go clean that bathroom. You need to pick up those cups. You need to clean that table. And there's a manager giving them, but service technicians and service work and in home service work, house cleaning, pool service. I mean, pool service, The way it should be done is not the way it's done at all. I was a certified pool operator. Most of the time, they're only checking for acid and they're only checking for chlorine levels. They're not checking for calcium. They're not checking for all the other minerals. They're not checking to see how systems are. Okay. They're just going to go there. They're going to clean the bottom of the pool. They're going to add not even the amount of chlorine that's required to get the level right. They're checking it once. They're not letting it go. And then they're leaving. And they're putting acid and bleach. And they don't even know the ratio that they should be adding based on the level. They just know the level was low. 90% of the time, that's how it's done. This is why most, I don't know what it is now, about $100 a month, $25 a visit. You need to learn how to get tight routes. What percentage of homes have pools? Are you targeting those? Are you going online to your county, or you're going on Google Earth and going there and says, that house has a pool, that house has a pool, that house has a pool, I'm going to go visit them next week. I got the addresses. And you have boom, 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 boom. As a matter of fact, pool service is one of those that is started like by firefighters, because they work 3 days on or 4 days on, 3 days off, and they go start a side hustle that they can run a route in the days that they're off and make really good money while they're off on those days. I mean, that's typical for firefighters to go start these little side hustles. You can learn from all these industries, but the reality is you need to learn sales, you need to learn marketing, you need to learn how to hire, you need to learn how to manage people. This is why 6 to 11% of people grow their business to over $1 million, because it is darn hard. It's not easy. I'm not trying to sell you, sitting here trying to sell you sunshine, and rainbows and purple unicorns. This is going to be your reality. But understand that if you get the tools what the biggest thing you have to do is you just have to accept certain facts. When you accept the facts that the numbers are the numbers, that it takes, 50 interviews for you to hire 2 or 3 people, put them on test, realize that you got to fire them and you got to start all over again. When you realize that's the reality, just accept it. That's the mind shift. That's the mind change. You just say, that's the game. Those are the rules. If I want to play in this arena, those are the rules. I just accept those rules and I move on. I don't try to bucket and kick against the goads, because it's going to be a bloody mess. When you do that, this is where people that's why I don't hire anymore. That's why I stopped hiring. That's why I stopped doing this. That's because I couldn't accept those facts. I got to the point where it used to take me a year to fire somebody. Then it take me 9 months. Now I'm to the point where, I see that it isn't going to work out within the first 2 to 3 days, a week, a month. And I see the changes where they weren't the same person. Everybody's on their best behavior. Understand that interviews are bullshit, because everybody's going to embellish a resume and use 20,000 words on it that they never did and don't understand. They're going to put their best foot forward. What your job in the interview process is saying, okay, obviously this guy's a no. Obviously this guy's a no. He doesn't make eye contact. I need people to make eye contact. I need people that can talk to me. I need people that dress a certain way, understanding the environment they're in. And how are they going to dress when they show up to the customer's house? Are they going to be able to talk to the customer? Are they going to be able to explain the service? When you're doing an interview question is, so how do you solve a customer problem? Well, they're going to tell you what the ideal way is. It's a different question. It says, in the past, when you had a very difficult customer, how did you solve it? You can tell by the body language that they're making it up, it's total BS, or that they actually had to deal with a situation like that. Your job in the interview process is just to cut through the bullshit. Then you hire them and you figure out that, they look great on paper, they sound great, but they don't know which end of the hammer to hold. And no matter how much you teach them, they just don't have the dexterity. They don't have the skills. They can't be out in the sun. They get fatigued. When you put them in field testing, this is when you really know. And this is the companies that grow and move on can realize and say, listen, bud, I'm sorry that I put you through this. We're going to give you a 1-day trial. Have a 1-day trial. The way you do it is you set up a 1-day trial. Hire them. Go through all the paperwork. And then say, if I'm going to have you drug tested. And if you come back positive, you can't work for me. It's that simple, because you can't drive a vehicle. I don't know when you're under the influence. I'm going to do a background check on you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hire you. I'm going to pay you for the day. And you're going to go work with me a whole day. And then you're going to tell me at the end of the day if this is something you want to do for 40 hours a week, or 3 days a week, or 4 days a week. If the answer is no, they ghosted you, they don't show up, they don't give you a call back, you have your answer. You don't need to keep trying. You forget about it. Go to the next guy you interviewed and do the same thing. And this is why it costs, when you look at these numbers, these ridiculous numbers. What is the average cost to hire an employee? Let me show you something. Let me actually go in here, show you a screen. All right. And I guess this is it. Let's see if this one shows up. And I don't know if you guys are seeing all the different screens, because the way this thing does it, let me see here. And let's go over here to a new tab and go there. Actually, yeah, it doesn't do that. So, I didn't realize that. All right. So, window. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to give you a window, because I showed you all that. I'll probably just re-record that little piece again to show it to you. But dang it. Okay. I hope you're seeing this. What is the average cost to hire? All right. And you look through this to hire. Oh, my bad. To hire an employee. All right. Between 4,000 and 20,000. On average, it's going to be about 4,000. So when you look at it, you're going to get numbers all over the place, but this is the real cost. So again, it's what is it going to take? And as long as you can accept these things, you realize, yes, I can do it. It is doable, because everybody has to go through it. There is no course you can take that's going to shortcut it that much to where, if not, I would try to sell it. There is no help. If you look at, go Google. Let me show you this. This is really funny. Let's go at the entire window. All right. When you go here and says, you go to Google and you go is why hiring your first field service technician. Basically, you're going to get the same BS. Create a job post, review the matches. It's a step-by-step on the same junk. There, you can't find how to do this. There is no how-to. The how-to is how to hire a field service company's first employee. All right. I can drop these in the notes for you. I mean, you can Google this yourself. Get an employer identification number. Contact the labor department. Check your workman's compensation. Basically, it's all the non-things that you have to do to hire an employee. Okay? There's no help for this. So you're going to find just the same people repeating the same AI content over and over and over, giving you a high level. You need to have great compensation. No duh. You need to create a corporate culture. You're the corporate culture. You need to do this. You need to do that. These are things that you have to develop over time as you hire and grow. But in the beginning, you're not going to have any of that. You're barely going to be a one man and a helper. I don't know if anybody, I started, let's see here. I started in wildlife department after years in commercial pest control. Awesome. Let me see here. Nash, when I'm going to start answering questions. We got about 10 minutes. When I first got hired in the industry, they gave me a personality test. Yes. Personality profiles. This is a great comment. Personality profiles are excellent. They're expensive. When I was doing that, it was about $1,800, $2,000 for the year for unlimited. tests on people. And here's the common denominator I found across all the people that I had tested. And I had a couple hundred tested that year that would take the test to get hired. In other words, they had to take the personality profile. The number one thing I found is really low self-esteem. This is the biggest thing I found with employees. They had low self-esteem almost across the board. The problem with that is what they tended to do is overcompensate with what they thought was being proactive was more of an impulse where they did things. And I found this constantly where they keep doing things. When I asked them why they did it, that it's not in the training, it's not in the program. Well, I just thought it was a good idea. And I just see this pattern. So this is why people need to be managed. If people have low self-esteem, how are they going to talk to your customers? How are you going to get them to upsell? How are you going to get them to offer things to customers when the rejection thing is going to be massive? What people fear most, the reason people don't go into sales is because they fear rejection. The reason a lot of the times you feel personally rejected by employees when they quit to go do something else. The chances of an employee, the biggest risk you have right now with employees is that you're not training them enough because you're afraid that if you train them too much, they're going to quit and go start up. The chances of that happening is about 6%. You haven't hired 100 employees to go through that. It's an invalid fear. You're not going to train them because they're just going to quit in 6 months. You need a training program that's adequate for the amount of time they're going to be there and the work they're going to be doing. In other words, can you train that person in 3 to 4 days to sweep windows and treat perimeter with 3 products that you're going to rotate throughout the year? And if there's any complaints in the house that they can't solve after 3 visits, then you get involved. That's been my motto. Chances are, if I taught them how to place the stations in the right place with the right product for the right ant, which is the biggest thing, and for American roaches, check the monitors, and put the granular bait where it's supposed to go when the customer complains, 99% of the time, I don't have to get involved in that. It's those very, very difficult cases that are going in. I don't send them to do initial roach service. I don't send them to do very difficult things. You got to create a training program that's adequate for the task. You got to learn to hire for tasks versus for an entire job description. The job description of what they're going to do is a level 1 tech. Here's what a level 1 tech does. Here's what a level 2 tech. A level 2 tech does roach cleanouts, does bed bug. A level 3 tech does termite, bed bugs, roaches, and maintenance. And that's how you do it. What you're going to find is the chances of you getting to that level 3 tech is going to be maybe 1 out of 100 hires. So that's the reality of what everybody faces when we look at the real numbers. Personality tests are going to just tell you how to communicate. It depends on the test, man. If you give one of the tests that I used to give, man, does it give you a really good idea on the personality. Again, you're going to pay through the nose for them. But I did it. And what I found is these were 45-minute personality and aptitude tests. And what I did is they gave them 3 different ones, because what happens with a lot of people is they learn how to take a DISC test, because DISC is the most popular one. And they learn how to take it and they learn how to BS their way through it. But when you get these different tests that give it to them in 3 different ways with 3 different ways of evaluating, what you see is when you put them side by side, you see the patterns in the personality. And again, the one that kept coming up constantly over and over was low self-esteem. What they tended to do was over-talk in their interviews to compensate for that self-esteem, where they talked a lot and just, they learned to do that to BS their way through an interview. This is why you need all the tools, why you need to look at that resume. You need to look at the history. You need to look at also doing background checks. Is indispensable. You can't have a guy on a pedophile list going into someone's home. You just can't have it. So, let's see here. What else do I got? EcoPest, frozen Michigan. Good morning. You're still frozen up there, huh? Yeah, you guys have permafrost up there in that area. Good morning. That control, Malin. What's your favorite mouse bait? I don't do a lot of mouse. I mostly do rats. What I find is we carry 3 different ones. We use first strike for bringing down heavy populations, especially when we have a lot of wooded areas that have heavy populations. We use first strike, and then we use final in that mix because of the product, the way it works to get the population down. Then we either stick to final depending on how populations remain, or we go to JT eating peanut. That seems to be working really well. Now, what you got to understand about mouse baits and rodent baits, it is really dependent. What's going to work in one part of the country isn't going to work in another. And the reason is because of what they're used to feeding on. In different cities, there's different things for them to feed on. I have a lot of nuts here because we have a lot of live oak trees. We have palms. I mean, I go to a property and you can find seeds all over the ground everywhere. So rodent populations are used to seeds. This is why Final and JT eating peanut, because they have seed products in them. So what you really have to do is test. You can't know what is my favorite here because my favorite here isn't necessarily going to work where you're at. Who else is got questions? Let me go on here. I think I'm live on YouTube. And I don't know if I went live on there. I think I might have not gone live on there because I forgot to put in the code. Let me go here to my channel, switch account, Pest Geek Podcast. Let's see here. Did I go? I managed to go. I think I logged on and I forgot to go live there. That was my bad. But I am, I believe, live here on Facebook. And we got about 3 minutes. I'll cut this off at 10 o'clock. Go over here. Make sure I'm answering the questions because I don't get to see them. I don't think I get to see them all. I am on YouTube because you guys are asking these questions on YouTube. Very few people on Facebook, actually. You're watching me on YouTube. Oh, that's pretty cool. All right, so it did go on there. I don't know if I have any live people here that joined on TikTok. Let me know that you can follow me, pestgeekpodcast.com. You can go to Pest Geek on YouTube, on every social media channel. I'm on there. We're on every that matters, about 9 of them across the board that matter. We're on there. And soon the Service Geek Podcast is going to be having its own website and its own channels for a lot of this because we are getting into a lot of different service industries. So I don't know, hire slow, fire fast. Yeah, unfortunately, that used to be the old, if you have the time, Aaron, if you have the time, because what you tend to do is hire so slow that you overthink it because you become over picky about who you want and you're wanting this perfect human being that doesn't exist. What happens with hire slow is that if you have enough of a pool of candidates, but most of the time a candidate isn't going to wait for you for a month for you to make up your mind. He's looking for another job. He's going to find one. And what happens is you really have to hire fast and fire fast. You got to pull the trigger, go through all that as fast as you can, skim through all those resumes, all the BS, hire the person, put him in a truck, see how he does for 1 or 2 days. What does your gut tell you on that person of what you're looking for? Because you know what you're looking for, but you have to be realistic on what you're looking for, which is the biggest problem that we have is the unrealistic expectation. And then you go and say, okay, 2 to 3 days for a week, I gave this guy, I don't feel he's going to make it. Usually they will tell you before because if they're younger, they're just going to ghost you. They're not going to show up back to work. They don't want the confrontation. They just rather not tell you anything and just not show up again. If they don't show up again, they voted. And you're done. You move on to the next one. But by the time you get through background checks, it could take 2 weeks. You get through drug testing. You get through all of this. You're going to find that person moves on, especially if they're younger. They don't have the patience to sit around and wait for you to make up your mind. That is the other problem that you're having. That you're not going to be able to, they're going to have to be older and they're going to have to be in a position where they don't have to make a decision. They're just looking for a better opportunity. If they're looking for a better opportunity, you have a brand, you have something they like, something that they're going to be interested in, they might wait around for you. but that you can't bank on that. That's going to be like, I find out that if I call them back and I wait more than a week or two, they've already jumped ship. What you see a lot, remember that 60 to 70% of people are looking to jump ship at any given time. The average turnover rate right now in America is about 53%. Depending on the industry, when you average it out, it is about 40%. Why? 60% of people are looking. The young people are like, here today, I don't like this job. I'm here for 6 months. And what they're into is a lot of learning. If you can't provide a lot of learning and a lot of instruction, and where they feel comfortable, where they don't make mistakes, they're going to move on, because it's just the conflict and the conflict avoidance is too large. It's really big. If they're at home and they're still living with mom and dad and all they need is gas money and a car and date money, what's keeping them from jumping from place to place, experimenting, finding out what they like? Because remember, you got kids, literally kids, 20-year-olds, 30 to 30, that they're going to be mostly those high school kids that never graduated, never got a college degree. That's what you have to pick from. And that's the challenge. That's why it's so hard, because you're not getting you. But what they're doing is they're trying to find what they like and what they enjoy. Because remember, everything today is about the experience. That's the mentality. So you got to work with that mentality. If they're figuring out what they're going to do, and 6 months to a year is not going to happen. It's about 6 months, 3 to 6 months. They do the job. Yeah, it's great, but it's really, I don't see myself doing this the rest of my life. On to the next one. Could you create a system where you can utilize that mentality in your favor and say, okay, I realize he's going to be here for 6 months. Here's what you're going to say. My customers are never going to put up with that. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Every company's going through it. That's the reality. That's the reality, that every company is going through that. I just had one client. The problem is they don't train their people right. And says every week was a different kid that looks like he just got out of high school. I got fed up with it. So as long as you're training them well, there are no customer complaints. You can keep a track of your KPIs and monitor your KPIs. Like I saw with my tech, after a long while, the KPI started creeping up. The customers didn't drop off and didn't complain. We just had more callbacks to do. People weren't quitting. We experienced more callbacks. What I figured out is I'm just not going to treat the property and spend that much time on it. If I treat the perimeter at the bottom, it's good enough. We didn't treat the soffits around windows, doors, and we saw that. And it just took me 9 months to make that decision when I shouldn't have. But there's a lot of personal involvements. You got emotional issues there involved on people. You think, oh man, I got to go through this process again. Have a process like the franchises that can actually do this, but just do the minimum and say, okay, if he's with me for 6 months, great. Maybe it's you hire a guy you're doing a lot of termite. Well, I just need a guy to drill. And I'll set up these termite jobs on the days he has off because he's my drill guy. I just need somebody who can dig trenches twice a week. I'll pay him $200 a day to dig trenches. You see, what can you do to modify your operation to where you simplify certain jobs that you hire for? I think that's the main takeaway on this, because we're not going to solve the issues of what everybody wants. It's like buying software. When you're buying software, chances are you got to modify your operation, because not every software is going to do what you want it to do. You have to modify it. So I'm going to go ahead and quit there. Hopefully I got everything. I will be posting this again, and then look me for the shorts, and also for the content that we're going to be broadcasting this. Send it to your friends. Hey man, you're thinking about starting up, you've been struggling, listen to this. All right, folks, Frank the Service Geek. Have a pestacular day.